So as you just heard, I'm a PHP developer, I'm a user group leader, I am both a mentor and an apprentice. So I am working on both sides of the mentoring relationship. And I can't tell you which side I like better, so that's why I'm going to talk about both sides today during my talk. I'm also a stay-at-home mom, and I run a consulting company. I do a lot of freelancing. As you heard, I do a number of other things as well outside of PHP. I like to be busy, so. I am totally happy with audience participation. I apologize for the people in the other room who may have a harder time, but if you want to pop your head in here and wave at me, I'm happy to answer questions, or we'll try to keep it. No? Okay, good. No, I'm not disappointed. I don't know if anyone else understands, but I get super nervous knowing there's a bunch of people staring at me that I can't even tell are staring at me, so that's totally fine. Okay, so I'm totally fine with questions at any time, so get my attention if you have any questions. So I just want to start with a little bit about what this talk is not. This talk is not a magic formula that will work for everybody and make your mentoring relationship perfect. There is no such thing as one perfect formula for mentoring because every person is different, so every relationship is going to be different. So you need to take a look at the things that I am offering here, and I don't even do all of the things that I'm offering here because not all of them work for me or for the people that I'm mentoring with. So you have to take a look at what's going to work best for you and then judge which ones will help the most. So I'm going to start from the side of the relationship of the apprentices. So when you're talking about being an apprentice, the very first thing you need to do before you find a mentor, before you take a look at online resources, you need to take a look at what do you need out of this relationship? Why do you want to have a mentor? It's going to be hard to find a mentor to give you what you want if you don't know what you want. So start by sitting down and defining, first of all, why do you want a mentor? Do you want to improve your coding skills? Do you want to learn a specific skill? Do you just want to have someone to talk to encourage you to keep learning? What do you want from this mentor? Next up, once you know what you want, define your goals. Now these goals should be specific goals. They should be tangible things that you can actually measure success against. So you don't want to say, oh, I just want to learn more, because obviously you can always learn more. You can never accomplish having learned more. We need something that we know specifically, okay, yes, I accomplished this. These are the kinds of things you want to be able to tell your mentor, I want to be able to accomplish these steps. Next up, your timeline. Is this something, oh, I need to learn this right now because next week I have to use it? Is this something, oh, this is something I sort of want to learn sometime in the future, anytime in the next 6 months or the next year? Maybe your goal is that you want to speak at a conference, so you have a specific conference in mind. That's a deadline for your goal. Once you know what you want out of the relationship and you have some idea of when you need it, you need to know what kind of relationship you want to have. So what do you expect from your mentor? Do you expect them to chat with you on the phone every week? Do you want someone in person who can meet with you for coffee every other week? Do you want someone who's going to Skype with you once a month? Do you want someone who will just be around and available to answer questions via email if you have questions? What kind of a mentor do you want to have? And lastly, you have to make a commitment to the work. Mentoring is very hard. Being an apprentice is a lot of work. You need to make sure that you are ready to do this work because you're asking a mentor to take time out of their day or their month and give you knowledge in this relationship, and you need to respect that time that they're giving you. So you need to make sure that you are ready to put in the effort here. Once you are, now you need to find a mentor. And there's a great website called phpmentoring.org. There are a lot of mentoring websites out there. This one is specifically PHP focused. It's a free service. You can sign up to be either a mentor or an apprentice on phpmentoring.org. And I will say that right now there is an overabundance of mentors looking for apprentices. So if you are thinking, oh, it'll be too hard to find a mentor, you're wrong. There's tons of people out there looking for apprentices. So if you are looking for a mentor, please stop by. Other places you can look as well. GitHub has the PHP mentoring information as well. And then you can also check in the PHP mentoring IRC chat. There's an IRC channel on Freenode. If you aren't familiar with IRC, There is a handy web interface, so you don't have to install anything. You can just pop on the web interface and pop in the channel and ask. You can also check for people who have spoken on the topic. So you can check SlideShare, Joined In, PHP.net has a list of conferences you can check. So if there's a specific topic you're looking for, find someone who's spoken on that topic and see if they would be interested in mentoring you, or if they may know someone else in that field who would be interested in mentoring you on that topic. You can also check your local user group. php.ug has a list of user groups. Nomad PHP also has videos on topics and speakers as well that you can get a list of. And meetup.com is another place to find user groups or groups that meet to talk about the topic that you're interested in. Podcasts are another place to look for mentors. If you can find a podcast on the topic that you're looking for, see who is talking about it. And here are some podcasts you can check out. Now, from the mentoring side, mentors also need to define their needs and what they're looking for out of the mentoring relationship. Believe it or not, a mentoring relationship, being the mentor, doesn't just mean you are giving to the other person. It is amazing how much you will get out of the relationship as well. So define for yourself, why do you want to be a mentor? Are you interested in helping someone? Do you like teaching on a certain topic? What is it that you really want out of this? Do you want to be challenged to continue your learning because when you're teaching someone else, you have to learn it first? What is it that you want out of this? As a mentor, it's important to set your boundaries, and it's important to set these in advance. It's really hard once a relationship has started to go back and set boundaries retroactively. So it's good to think about what your boundaries are in advance. Do you mind if someone stops by your house to say hello and ask you a question? Do you care if they call you on the phone? Are there certain hours of the day you'd prefer they not call you on the phone? Those kinds of things let you know what you're going to be comfortable with in the mentoring relationship and what kind of mentoring relationship is going to work for you. Another important step is, how will you react when a boundary is crossed? Will you feel comfortable emailing the person to talk about it? Will you feel comfortable talking to them about it in person? If a boundary is crossed, what do you want to happen at that point? Do you want to end the mentoring relationship? Do you want to just talk about it and fix it and move on? These kinds of things are important to think about in advance because it's difficult to think about them sort of in the heat of the moment. So if you can spend some time thinking about it before the relationship starts and before you're invested in this person, it can be a lot easier to discuss it with them. Next up, you'll need to define, what do you know about? What can you mentor on? What are you willing to teach about? What are you willing to talk about? What are areas that maybe you're good at? And this can be difficult for some people. I know it was difficult for me to think about at first. We all have a bit of imposter syndrome, and we think, oh, I don't have anything to offer people. But we all have something to offer. And if you're not able to think of something that you'd be exceptionally good at for mentoring, talk to the people who work with you or people who know you. Other people are a lot better at seeing what we're good at than we are necessarily. So find out what you're good at, and find out what level you're good at. Even if you're only at sort of an intermediary level on something, you're still perfectly capable of helping out a beginner. So you don't have to be the top expert in your field on a certain topic to be a good mentor. You just need to be honest about the level you're at so that the apprentice knows what to expect. And also, mentors need to be able to commit to the work. Being a mentor is a lot of hard work, and it's a lot more work than you may think at first. I know going in, when I first started mentoring, I picked up 4 apprentices because there were so many apprentices available, and I thought, oh, I can help all of them, this is going to be so great. And then real life sinks in, and you realize, okay, I really can't devote the time I need to all of these people. So you have to be willing to commit and understand that it is a lot of work, it's going to take a lot of time. When you're looking for an apprentice, once again, phpmentoring.org. I'll only mention it 4 or 5 more times during this talk. So phpmentoring.org has a large list of mentors already there, but feel free to make the list longer. We're always still looking for new mentors. But take a look at where people are asking questions. A lot of people ask questions in IRC channels, Stack Overflow, Reddit. Not necessarily the greatest places to sift through, but if you find someone who is asking a question, they may be interested in being mentored on the topic if you have the answer. You can check too at local universities, at your user groups, meetups, things like that. There's going to be people asking questions at all of those kind of gatherings. And perhaps students at universities would be interested in a mentor as well. A lot of them are new to the industry, new to working at a job outside of the university, and may be really interested in hearing just what's it like to have a job in the real world. Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then let the rest of us know, right? So once you've found a mentor or an apprentice, you need to build the relationship. You want to make sure that your needs align. If you've both sat down and sort of defined what you want out of the mentoring relationship, that conversation can be really easy. Okay, I want to have someone who meets once a month. This person wants to have someone who meets every week. Probably not the greatest relationship. But maybe you can make it work somehow and compromise on twice a month. So kind of talk through where your needs align, where they don't align, what can you do about it. Again, it's very easy to talk about these things up front before you get into it, before you start, but it's very, very difficult to sort of go back and try to force it in to something that's already evolved into something else. So start these things up front. Very, very important to make sure your boundaries align and to make sure those boundaries are very clear from the beginning. A lot of people don't mean to cross boundaries, but if you don't know a boundary is there, you don't necessarily know you're about to cross it. So if somebody's not comfortable being called at home, but they don't make that clear, then their apprentice may start calling them at home, completely unaware that they're making their mentor very uncomfortable. So just putting those things out there right from the start can make things a lot easier and have things go a lot more smoothly. Beyond that, a little bit of chemistry can go a long way as well. Are you comfortable talking to each other? Do you trust each other? Having an apprentice means you need to trust them with the information you're giving you. You need to trust them to respect your boundaries. And you need to trust them to put in the effort. If you're going to put forth effort on your part, you want to feel confident that they are going to put in the effort too and not let you down. On an apprentice side, you need to trust that your mentor is not going to laugh at you when you ask a question. This is a relationship of trust on your part as well. It's not easy to say, hey, I don't know anything about this. Will you teach me? That's not an easy thing to say. So you need to find a mentor that you feel comfortable being able to say that to, because you want to be honest in the relationship. If you pretend you know more than you do in the mentoring relationship, you're not going to get out of it what you need to get out of it. Once you've sort of defined the relationship and established that it's going to work, the next thing is to create deliverables. Now this sounds a little bit administrative, but having tangible deliverables based on those goals that you created earlier can really be helpful. So when you have a goal, I recommend about 3 tangible deliverables to get to that goal. That way it's not like, oh, I want to speak at a conference. It's like, okay, well, let me know if you need any help and I'll see you at the conference. That's probably not going to work very well. Set up, okay, well, you need an abstract to submit to the CFP. So March 12th, we're going to sit down and talk about the abstract, so make sure you have it written by then. Or maybe by March 1st, you have to have a topic, then we'll talk about how to write an abstract by March 12th, and by April 1st, you can submit it to the CFP. Having those kinds of stages defined helps not only the apprentice know what they have to get done, but helps keep everything on track to achieving those goals successfully. If you're going to be meeting in person or on the phone or on video chat or even just in some sort of chat program, make sure you set dates for multiple meetings. It's really easy to set the date for the first meeting and then sort of forget to schedule any other ones. So I recommend trying to set 2 or 3 of them in advance while you're very excited about the relationship and everything's new and you're looking at the calendar. Get a couple scheduled in advance. Once you can sort of get into the habit of meeting regularly, it becomes easier and you start to expect that to be in your schedule. But when you're first getting started, it can be very difficult to fit things in. So setting multiple dates to meet in advance can be very helpful. It's good too to keep an eye on the dates for those deliverables and try to schedule the meetings around those dates for the deliverables. Perhaps they're going to need to talk about it before they deliver whatever it is they're delivering. So maybe set the meeting a week before the deliverable is due. After the deliverable deadlines, make sure you set a meeting for a relationship retrospective. Once you've achieved the goals they've set out, it's time to evaluate the relationship. Evaluating the relationship is not a fun step, but it's a really important one. You want to evaluate, okay, we set these goals. Did we actually meet them? Yes or no? Are you happy with how we met them? Are you happy with the result? Perhaps you met the deadlines but didn't get accepted to speak at the conference, so you've partially met your goal. What can we do next time to change this? Or is there another goal we can set for another conference that will work in the meantime? Talk about where you want to go from here. Do you want to set a new set of goals? How have things been going with the relationship as far as our meetings? Do you feel comfortable talking to each other? Are you feeling comfortable in the knowledge that's being passed back and forth? Have there been too many phone calls, not enough phone calls? Are expectations on both sides being met? These are the kinds of things that you want to talk about. When you have your evaluation, if things are working well and you want to continue, you need to reset some new quantifiable goals, a new set of tangible deliverables, and some new real deadlines. That should say real deadlines. Those are the kinds of things spell check doesn't pick up. So you want to have real deadlines again. So you basically repeat that planning phase again and make sure to set another date for another evaluation to see if you want to keep going. Perhaps the relationship worked well, but you don't need to continue. Well, if you don't need to continue the relationship, perhaps you've achieved your goal and now they need a different kind of mentor. Perhaps they've exceeded your level. Perhaps they've accomplished their goal and they just don't need a mentor right now. That's okay. That's good. Make sure you do a wrap-up of some kind. Still talk about how things went. Make sure that if you're going to be doing mentoring in the future, if they're moving on to another mentor, you talk about, were there any things that we could have done better on our sides of the relationship? That way, you can have some idea of what to improve on for next time. If you're an apprentice and you're canceling on your mentor, make sure they know the reason why. Don't leave them hanging thinking that something they said made you very upset. Let them know, hey, I've accomplished my goal, I don't need to do this anymore, but thank you so much for all your time. And the thank you so much for all your time is very, very important. Even if things, are not necessarily ending on the greatest of terms, make sure you say thank you. They've spent the time investing in you, even if it wasn't necessarily ending up being what you wanted. So make sure you say thank you. And sometimes the evaluations determine that things are not so great. So if you have to end the mentoring relationship because things aren't going well, don't look at it as a failure. Sometimes things just don't work out and it's okay. Life gets in the way, personalities don't mesh well. There are just things that happen. Look at it as a chance to do a wrap-up, figure out what went wrong, how you're going to change it for next time. Make sure, again, you talk to your mentor and or apprentice about the reason that you're ending the relationship, especially if it's something specific that they were doing. This is something that they should be aware of. And it's still important for an apprentice to show the mentor gratitude, even if things didn't go well, because they still made the effort to try. Maybe they didn't end up being able to come through in the long run, but they still made that effort up front, so it's really nice if you can still end things on a good note, even if the relationship didn't necessarily go well. There are a lot of tools that you can use to also help keep things going. Calendar reminders can be a great one. Whatever calendaring program you use that probably has reminders of some kind. So make sure that you have reminders set for the meetings, for the deliverables, things like that. If you don't have a specific to-do list, I have a couple of to-do lists. There are a billion out there, different tools, whatever works best for you. For the meetings, you can use Google Hangouts, Skype, FaceTime, even just Slack or IRC. There's a lot of different ways you can do it if you're not able to meet in person, which a lot of times you aren't since we're all scattered all over the world. Having scheduling tools for email can be very helpful, especially if you're on the mentor side of things. Being able to say, okay, we're setting a delivery deadline of here. I'm going to send you 3 reminder emails to make sure you get it done before then. Scheduling those in advance is very handy, so you don't have to remember in the future, oh, I think I need to remind them today about this. So scheduling tools can be very handy. MailChimp you can use for free. I think if you're sending less than 10,000 emails a month, which if you're sending that many reminders, you probably have too many apprentices. So MailChimp is a free option. Also, the Ivor HQ blog post here has scheduling plugins for Gmail, Outlook, and Thunderbird. So if you're using any of those email programs, you can type up the emails in advance, set a schedule date, and then it will send approximately when your email is open during that time. That's the only trick with those. But if you're like me and your email is open all the time, those work really well. One thing that can be very helpful, especially in a PHP-type mentoring relationship, is being able to share and collaborate on code. So Google Docs with track changes is a free option, not a super great option, but that is one option. If you're working on something like talk abstracts or articles that someone wants to get published, Google Docs with track changes can be very helpful. Otherwise, Collab Edit and Cobra.io are tools that both have a free tier, and they are collaborative online tools. They have code syntax highlighting. They're specifically designed for working on code simultaneously. Cobra.io also has voice and video chat built into it as well, so you can video chat or voice chat while you're working on the code together. So a really nice one. And then I included an article that has 20 best code editors for real-time collaboration, in case you want some more options. I have not tried all of those, so. All right, and I have a resources slide, but my slides have already been posted, so don't worry about the resources slide here. You can look at those links later. And a couple of thoughts just on mentoring in general. So mentoring, it's about sharing knowledge, of course, but the important thing about mentoring from both the apprentice side and the mentoring side is to stay active, to be encouraged to stay active. You want to actively learn, participate in the community, participate in the lives of other developers. We all have our own experiences. We all have our own tools that we're using, our own problems that we're accomplishing. But we can learn so much from each other if we can stay connected. And that will help you to actively improve your coding skills, which is vital nowadays to staying employed. So something we're all pretty interested in. And now I'd like to take a minute because I'm hoping you're all here because you're interested in either being a mentor or an apprentice. And I just want to see if anyone has any questions, any specific situations they'd like to discuss about mentoring. Yeah, and there's no other room, so you guys are it. So.
We have mics as well.
Oh, and we have mics. Right, I forgot about the mics.
Hi there.
Hi.
So I'm curious about how much awareness there is in a mentorship community about the importance to listen and coaching, and if there are awareness of the difference. When do you have to step in or step back and be a coach rather than be directive and guiding? And I'm not in that community, so I wonder if there is that awareness and how is that going?
Sure. So the question is when to know to step back and when to push your apprentice a bit more from the mentor side?
Yeah, if there is an awareness of that in the mentorship, like now it's time for me to listen, now it's time for me to guide or not give answers, like when you adopt a coaching style and you're not giving answers, if that's something that...
Yeah, it's really going to depend on the apprentice and also the mentor. Some mentors are very comfortable with listening and then doing gentle guiding. Some people's personalities just don't mesh well with that. With apprentices too, some apprentices, like me as an apprentice, I need a lot of pushing because I tend to procrastinate things until the absolute last minute. So I need a mentor who's going to be like, hey, you got it done yet? How's it going? Checking in with me and making sure I'm not waiting till the last minute to get things done. But other apprentices may want, less pushing, and they may feel very intimidated by the pushing and may feel overwhelmed by it. So that's really sort of part of the define your needs out of the relationship step. If you're someone who really needs pushing, that's great. Let them know. If you're someone who is going to be completely overwhelmed and get very frustrated with things if there's constant nagging, then that's something you need to talk about up front, because those kinds of things really make a huge difference in a mentoring relationship. Is that kind of? Yeah. I wouldn't say there's one good rule or rule of thumb for it, because it's so different depending on the people and what they need and what they're looking for. But I will say that most mentors that I've talked to are very aware of that and sort of try to ask about that up front.
There's a question at the front on the side there.
Hi, I am a mentor and I have a few mentees, but I struggle sometimes to know when they go quiet, how many times to ping them, because to some extent mentoring, as the mentor, I'm not really driving, am I? So what's appropriate there where you're not sure if they've lost interest or if you should be doing something?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, and that's another thing that is good to talk about up front. Like, if you stop responding to me, how much effort do you expect me to put into this to get you back? Because, as a mentor, especially if a mentor has multiple apprentices, there's only so much time you can invest in someone who's not responding to you. So I would say definitely, 2 or 3 times is sort of my general go-to rule because, okay, things get busy, people are out of town, whatever, So the first email is, whatever the normal reminder is, and then if you don't hear from them, it's like, hey, did you get my email? And if you still don't hear from them, be like, okay, so my third reminder is sort of if I don't hear from you by X date, I'm just going to assume that you don't want to do this anymore. So we'll just drop it if that. So let them know that you are going to be dropping them. Don't surprise them by not just suddenly dropping them and not responding again. So I try to make it clear in those emails where I am in the questioning process and what I'm expecting out of them if they don't respond. So that would be my recommendation. Mm-hmm.
More questions? Yeah.
If I'm a team leader, does it automatically make me a mentor, or does it have to be a formal relationship?
As a team leader, you're probably placed in a mentoring type role often, but it doesn't automatically make you a mentor. I would say, at least in the team environments I've been in companies, the team leads are more of a manager, and I view managers as very different than mentors, because a manager has authority over you in a business setting. They have a little bit more control over your career or your projects you're working on, and they also have their own job to do. So part of their job, yes, is to make sure you're getting what you need, but a mentor is more focused on, okay, let's sit down. What do you need to learn? I'm here to support you. And yes, managers are there to support you too, but it's in a very different role, I guess. So it's awesome if you can be a team leader and a mentor, but I wouldn't expect that, I guess, because there's so many managerial responsibilities as well. Also, in discussing sort of the trust that you need to build back and forth, being able to go to your manager and say, oh, I have no idea about this, I don't know anything about this, would be great, right? But let's say you're not comfortable doing that. Whereas with a mentor, you want to be comfortable admitting that you don't know something and that you need help with it or you're struggling with something. And that's not always something you're comfortable doing with a superior at work. So I would say as a team leader, I would encourage you to, of course, mentor if someone asks, if you're comfortable doing that and you have time to invest in it. But really encourage the people on your team to find mentors either outside of work or if it's more sensitive material within sort of their team level, I guess. So that, or someone from a different department who's not their direct supervisor kind of a thing, so that they can sort of build up that trust. So.
Okay, here we go.
As a mentee, is it expected that you just have one mentor?
No, not at all. You can have multiple mentors. As an apprentice, what you do, it really depends on what you want to learn. So if there are 2 different things you want to learn, you may not be able to find a mentor who can mentor you on both of those topics. I will say that if you have more than one mentor, make sure you have the time for more than one mentor because, the mentoring relationship can be very time-consuming, so make sure you have the time to devote to both of those topics effectively and to both of those mentors. But there's nothing that says you can't have more than one mentor, and I would be honest with your mentor when you sign up a second one. Say, hey, I'm going to pick up a mentor on this topic just so you know, just because you don't want them to be surprised that, oh, you didn't think I knew that and I do or something. Just to keep the communication lines open, but I think as a mentor, I think it's great when my apprentices have more than one mentor because there is so much out there to learn. They can't possibly learn everything from me, so the more the merrier, in my opinion.
Have you ever been in the situation where you're a mentor and you have a mentee, but they have skills that you'd like to learn, so you kind of get the two-way, they're the mentor some days, you're the mentor on other days?
Yes, absolutely. I had an apprentice who wanted to learn to speak at conferences, which is something I'm very comfortable at. And they were really good at regex, which I was much less comfortable at, let's just say. And so some days I would help them with their writing, and other days they would help me with my regex. And it was just a good back and forth. So it's absolutely fine to switch back and forth. It's really just about who has the knowledge and who wants that knowledge. There's no specific hierarchy, I guess, of, no, I'm better than you, so I'm the mentor kind of a thing, you know? It's absolutely, we're all developers, we're all working together. Let's share this knowledge that we all have accumulated. So. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I actually have a question. I've been teaching a little this last year, and the section you talked about defining boundaries has been very important there. Although it's not so much a mentoring situation, that is definitely a teaching position, but it is slightly odd. It's not in the classroom, it's via Skype, it's with students who are on work placements throughout Europe for just 8 to 12 weeks. So very small, very focused, but keeping the boundaries as to when they can expect and what they can expect from a Skype conversation is quite important. So I think when you're talking about setting that up at the beginning of the process, that's absolutely vital. There is nothing worse than composing yourself at 1 a.m. in order to make a nice response to a student rather than a rude and offensive response. And it's much better to do that at the top.
Definitely.
As a team leader, though, on the engineering side, it'd be quite hard to know when you could specify that. Do you say that when you recruit someone? Do you say that at the beginning of a project? I mean, how would you go about doing that on a practical sense and still be managerially responsible?
Sure. Yeah, definitely as a team leader, you're already sort of in a relationship with that person. I mean, from the moment you start interviewing them, some expectations have already been set for how you talk to each other and what's going on. So it can be kind of hard because there's no definitive start time to that. What you want to do in those kind of cases is as soon as you identify a need that you have, that's when I would start talking about it. As soon as you realize, okay, I am not going to be comfortable with this kind of thing, or I need someone to talk to me once a week, or as soon as you identify that goal or that need, or that boundary, I would bring it up then. Because if you just realized it, it probably hasn't, if it's a boundary, it hasn't been broken too many times if you're just realizing it bothers you. If it's a need that you have, you're probably just at the point where that need is going to start becoming more important. So as soon as you realize that you need it or it needs to be in place, that's when I would bring it up. So, yeah.
Other questions?
And just a real quick thought too, when you're a mentor dealing with an apprentice and then your roles switch and they become the mentor and you become the apprentice, it's good to sort of sit down and rediscuss those boundaries, because as a mentor you may have different needs and boundaries than as an apprentice. So it's kind of good, even though you're already in a mentoring relationship, it's good to sort of sit down and talk about it like, well, okay, now that I'm an apprentice, I might need to meet more often. Or, you know, maybe as an apprentice I need to talk on the phone, but as a mentor I'm not very comfortable talking on the phone. Whatever the case may be, it's a good time to sit down because your relationship is changing. And so it's good to reevaluate those boundaries and those needs anytime the relationship changes. So, good time too if any big life changes happen, like, oh, I just had a kid, now we need to talk about things, you know. The calls at 3 a.m., not so great anymore. Or maybe now they're better because I'm up anyways. So, yeah. So, yeah, anytime there's a big change in either person's life or in the role of the relationship or, you know, in their job employment status or anything, is a good time to rediscuss. I know sometimes, too, people change jobs and, you know, the NDA status of things changes. You can't quite talk about things anymore. It's good to always bring those up anytime those kinds of changes happen.
Yeah, full disclosure, Beth mentored me through my first being published in a PHP journal, so I know that there is tolerance to being slightly late on the submitting your deadlines and things, but she kept me very strict. Very good, very impressed.
I can be very strict on deadlines, so yes.
Any more questions? We have plenty of time, but that's not to mean that we haven't had plenty of information, as always. Some very useful stuff. Slides are up?
Yes, slides are up. I posted the link on The slides are up on treelinedesign.com/slides, but also on Joined In. So if you go to leave feedback on the talk, you can also get the slides there. I encourage everyone to leave feedback for the speakers because it is so important to be able to know what worked and what didn't and what to improve for next time. So if we give the talk again, we can know. So I encourage everyone to leave feedback for all the talks they go to. If you're not comfortable leaving public feedback or if you have any questions, you can email me anytime. My email is beth@treelinedesign.com. So feel free to drop me an email or you can find me at Twitter. My Twitter handle is down in the corner there, E3BethT. So you can hit me up on Twitter with questions or comments as well. And otherwise, I will hang out in this room for a while if anybody wants to come up and talk about things. Otherwise, I think lunch is next. So
Yeah, lunch is next. But before we go to lunch,
Oh, yeah.
if you could join me in thanking Beth Tucker Long. Thank you.
Thank you.